Hello, New York 11, and all of our friends from beyond. I am so excited to join you for a very special Talk About It Tuesday today with our awesome guest, Lorie Honor. And we will get into talking a little bit more about Lorie in just a moment. I can't wait for you to get to know her if you don't know her already and hear about her reflections from her recent run for Staten Island Borough Presidency. But for anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Brittany Ramos de Barros. I use she pronouns, and I am running to fight for New York 11 in Congress. And we have had a series of leaders, and we are building, in the past, and now we are building an unapologetic, people-powered campaign that is about, electing leaders that are really going to be investing in working class families and the things that everyday people need. And so, this show, we are so honored to host, but it's really not about us. It's an opportunity for us to uplift the big we, the big us, which are all of the organizers, people, organizations throughout New York 11 and beyond who are doing incredible work to make things more equitable, more fair, and just as we move forward. And so today we're excited to have you. Join us for this conversation with Lorie Honor, who I'm going to invite her to introduce herself and tell us a little bit more about herself. But for anyone who doesn't know her, she's one of the founders of Staten Island Women Who March, which is one of the more active, engaged, organized groups in Staten Island. And we don't have enough of them. So that's a big deal. And she has been instrumental in several issue-based and political and electoral campaigns, both within the district and around the country, all, culminating in her recent amazing campaign for the borough presidency, which we're going to hear more about today. Lorie, thanks so much for joining us.
Brittany, thank you for having me. It's such a great experience to be here. It's so nice to see you.
Likewise. And, so you ran a groundbreaking campaign. We have not had a woman as our borough president in how long? I mean, it's decades at least, ever.
No, we've never actually elected a woman borough president. Never. And I believe that in my, I hope somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe there's ever been a woman running as a viable candidate. Wow. Who went from from grassroots to primary. Like I did. So I'm really, wow. I'm really sort of embarrassed that it's taken this long, and also delighted that I was able to break the ice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's really important. I think it's really important when we build the kind of campaigns that even when we lose electorally, we win because we're building on the foundation that we keep building on until we change the landscape. And I feel like that was very much the spirit of your campaign and the spirit of the campaign that we're trying to build on from that.
Thank you. And I'm assuming that you're going to be much more successful than I was. I'm really excited to hear about your campaign and, and further it along. But I think the good money is on just investing in women, investing in people outside of the mainstream, investing in people who have real life experience and passion for leadership and coalition building and competency in other areas that don't necessarily have to be, legal or, the general, like the usual suspects, but like teachers, nurses, people in healthcare, people in activism, people in social work. These are the people who know the people, who know the families, who know the children, who know like the people on the, in the street, just like regular people. We're not surprised at how much, how people are suffering and how hard people are working. And I really love being surrounded by that community of workers, of doers, and of, shaker-uppers.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm so eager to get into talking about politics and work, but I also know that we try to step back and really get to know each other as people. And so I'm curious to hear a little bit more about your background. What was it like growing up for you? How did you come to love Staten Island? Were you always political? Did you get into, I just want to hear a little bit more about your journey to where you are now.
So I think, being a middle child, you're sort of born political. You're always like shouting for attention and crying, for like being misunderstood. So I think you're sort of hardwired for debate, for discussion, for I don't know, maybe that's a gross generalization, but for me, it was always like I was raised in a family that was really I don't want to say argued a lot, but we always had really lively dinner table conversation. Like we were just like it was almost like you were on trial every dinner time. You had to prove your point for everything you said. And I didn't know that was unusual or training for, like, I didn't know that was going to translate to like an actual skill set. But I think when you're used to always sort of like, poking and being poked in a loving way, and also in a very, sort of like rigorous and regular way, you just get used to sort of honing what you're about, what you believe in, why you believe in it, why you want other people to know it, and what you want to know about other people. Like, you're not like, well, why do you believe that? Why is that important to you? So I think at this stage of my life, it's not as confrontational as my own dinner table, but I feel like it's very authentic to how I am curious about people. I want to understand people's point of views. I want to express my own. And ultimately you want to get the biggest piece of dessert. So you have to sort of, you do want to win. I feel like not to win your point or but you want to be surrounded by people who are going to support you and who you want to support. I feel like it's pretty cool to be in this climate now. I mean, I grew up in New Dorp. Just to give you, like, it's not like I had this political. My father was a fireman. My mother was an immigrant. My family was very unusual, I think. I think I don't know. It was a very. My grandmother was divorced, and she had an immigrant, immigrants, grandparents on both sides. My favorite uncle was Jamaican. We had a mixed race family that lived in Tottenville. We were very like, I had all of these unusual regular experiences. They might have seemed unusual, but they were very regular. We had a large extended family that all spoke different languages that looked very different. So I was very like comfortable with like, not being in a homogenous New Dorp, upbringing. It wasn't as homogenous as maybe some people's experiences of, just very white, general American, Staten Island working family. So I'm really sort of grateful for those early lessons of hardship, of diversity, and sort of just having that sort of genetic sort of makeup that made me really feel comfortable, I think, at least empathetic to a lot of a variety of very common and all too common situations, whether they're xenophobia or racism or sexism or misogyny. I just think that if you have that in your mom's experience, my mother being a little girl who looked like a lot of the brown and black little girls that I've taught, that were suffering, whose parents and families were not thriving, and were hurting. I really related to that as a teacher. When I grew up and I became a teacher here, I was just like, these are my people. Like, I felt very empathetic. My mother looked exactly like all the little girls that I taught.
Wow. Yeah, that's really powerful. And I'm curious because so you had these lively debates growing up, and did that mean that you always were kind of into activism, or was there like a politicizing moment or that like really kind of propelled you into more everyday activism as part of kind of the work that you do?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I wish I were more like, I wish I had a better CV as a kid. I wasn't like on debate. I was, you know, I didn't really do anything extraordinary. Um, I think the biggest thing I did was, when our beer hall closed in college, I was like, they can't close our beer hall. Like, 'cause
I
that was like,
appreciate your activist
oh
priority.
yeah, like that was like my big front page
We're
of
all
like
politicized in
the
different ways.
local, the college paper. There was me like with my fists enraged because they were going to close
That's amazing.
the rat
I like
cellar.
definitely need to see a picture of that.
I think you could probably Google, I could get it, it's archived somewhere.
That's
But
so
I mean, I felt really, I felt like I had a very strong sense of what was right and what was wrong and who was getting what and who wasn't. And um, I think I was just a hardwired, my nickname when I was a little girl was Pollyanna, which, might not translate to a younger generation, but it was like a person who genuinely believes in like the goodness of others and wants everybody to get along. Like there's a part of me that's really, rooted in that. Like that's just my heart. Like I really am rooted in like love and coalition and, finding more ways to agree than disagree, but also finding a loving community. Like I think that, some people are, some people I don't think I'm not big enough to break bread with them, but I think that, ultimately there are more people that will, hopefully, I don't know, it's sort of a weird climate to say these things now, that people are generally good and they all want the same things. I don't know if that's true, but I feel like I'd like to, I don't think I can ever stop looking for that common ground.
Yeah. No, I think that I really resonate with that. And I think that it's something that is hard to hold in this climate, right? But is really important. And it's something I really appreciate about you. And, okay, so other than the beer hall,
Oh, sure. Oh, so
I'm
from the
curious.
beer hall.
So what was your first like political thing though that you were like that kind of like got you in the movement? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah. So I want to keep saying that. Well, I did run for vice president in fifth grade. So there was that. I got a very unforgiving haircut right before I gave my speech and nobody recognized me, so I lost because it was like, that's not Lorie.
Aw.
I know, it was like sort of, don't get a haircut right before
Sad.
election day. I know. It's like I went from like a curly
Women
to like a shag.
always judged
I
in
know, it was
politics
like,
for our
what a
looks.
day to get a shag at Cut and Curl on Newt Up Lane.
Right.
But I mean, as a young adult and as an adult, I was very rooted in women's rights. I was a member of National Organization of Women very early on. I was really, a sort of a campus. I wasn't as much of a feminist as my housemates. I mean, I wasn't rooted in like my housemates worked at the women's shelter. They walked women home. They were very like they were good, much better women than I was. But I learned from them, and I really admired them. And I think that I think all of the people that like eventually like added up, like they made imprints on me, and I sort of carry them with me. So I wasn't that person, but I became that person because of other people, right? So I think it's cool that when your time is right, you become who you're supposed to be. And so I guess after college, I moved to the city. I was like a Lower East Side Soho, just sort of scrappy person. I was well known for like sitting on cars that were getting towed, just thinking like, you can't tow this car. That sign wasn't clear. Like I was always like getting into sort of like dust ups with authority.
Dust ups with authority. I love it.
In a very like on the street, like personal way. I was like, what did you say? You can't talk to her like that. Did your mother raise you like that? Like I was very confrontational all the time. If you ask my husband, he has like, that's my CV. But as far as like officially, then I think I want to say like it's sort of a blur. Like you get married, you have kids, you're not really sure where the years go, but you're doing good work. You're working. You're sort of working on yourself. hopefully. And I think that's what I did. I did a lot of like, what am I about? What do I want? How do I express my values? Where do I put my money? Like, could I do this? Am I talented enough to eventually run for office, or form an organization that people would want to be members of, right? Like,
Yeah.
that after, I guess after 9/11, I ran a support group, just sort of like jumped into it.
Yeah, you were telling me about that.
For 2 years, we met every month, and it was a blessing. And talk about learning from,
Wow.
from everybody, from anyone who wanted to share those experiences and be a vulnerable person. And we did not talk politics. It was such a non-political thing. We didn't talk about the war. We didn't talk about getting, the president. We didn't talk about the attack even necessarily. We really just talked about, how can we take care of each other? How do we get through this together? How do I support you as your mom? And it was predominantly, all these groups formed in Staten Island in particular. And they were all like, one was like a young moms group, another one was like an older women's group. And for some reason, I really felt comfortable with the older women's group. Like, that was the group that we ended up like distilling into. It was like the moms of young people. And it was really sweet to be now probably on the age of those women, and they were the older women. And I just, again, learning from them, learning about grace, learning about forgiveness, learning about anger, learning about acceptance, learning about loss, learning from these women just by being blessed enough to be in their presence so consistently really helped me, I think, be a better person, carry those people with me. Those are people that are stamped on me forever.
Yeah.
And I carry their children with me, like I carry all of those, those loves, in addition to the women that I knew, my girlfriends who had lost their husbands, and neighbors and restaurant workers that I knew that, had passed. So I think that moment, being a young mom 20 years ago, it really affected me. It made me, not an angry activist, but like a helper. Like, what do I do? How many dinners did I make for firefighters? How many? My girlfriend Marion showed me activism. She's a pretty well-known, Marion Fontana. She lost her husband in Squad 1, Dave Fontana. We were couples, vacationing 2 weeks prior. We were in Cape Cod together, and then Dave was dead like 2 weeks later. And Marion was thrust into activism. That was the model. So I just followed her. I'm like, oh, Marion's an activist, so am I. Let's not close firehouses, and speak to power, and like go to Washington D.C. and like tell George Bush how fucked up things are. Like, this is what she did. So I was like, okay, I'll just do what you do. Because everything she was doing was right. So I learned from some very seriously beautiful examples that I didn't have a misstep in my life because of them. Everything I think I did was right for me because I learned from really righteous women.
That's amazing. Yeah. And I think it's so often that way that we get into the best kinds of organizing through relationship, right? Through just building relationship and common ground, common struggle, and common vision. And, I think thinking about your campaign that you just ran, I know we've had one of the things that you said to me when you were on the campaign trail that really struck me and stuck with me was you had talked about how you thought that the mold, right, the kind of playbook for how a candidate should be a candidate and how a campaign should be run, was really made by men for men, and that you wanted to run your campaign a different way. And that was, in that moment, I was like, wow, that's a really powerful point, and just affirmation, right? And so I'm curious what that, as you got into that, after you've been through this whole journey, what did that mean for you? What did that look like for you? And when you reflect on it, how do you feel about those choices? And like, what would your recommendations be to other women candidates from that experience?
Well, one of the best influences in my life politically is a woman named Lauren Chavez. Lauren Leader. She has an organization called All In Together, and I've sort of been in and out of her life for about 5 years. We were introduced by a mutual friend, and so her organization really taught me about, because it's a data collecting. It collects data about women who run, why women don't run, what women need to do to run. It was very gender specific about obstacles and opportunities that women have. So I always think it's not just the obstacles, it is the opportunity, right? Like I don't want to be like, I really claim my gender. I think that there are gender norms in certain contexts, like societal obstacles for women in politics are data driven. Like, these are not like I feel this way or this is my opinion. Like, this is
Right.
data. If you look at Gina Davis, the actress, she quit acting to run an organization, to start an organization that talks about gender inequity in the film industry, right? So Lauren Leader did something very similar in All In Together, where she really started an organization that talked about gender inequity in politics, running for office, and representation. And so when you look at data, and both of them are really, really savvy to say, well, the way you convince people that you're saying what that you can back up what you're saying is with math. Like, it's just like, this is just a bar chart, like, I didn't make it up. It's not my ovaries talking. Like, this is actual, like, fact-based stuff. And so I really enjoy, so for my campaign, like, having that in my back pocket, knowing that Lauren had done the research, had done the work, and I was benefiting by it, and then I knowing that women have to run a different way, not just sociologically, because that's just like personality wise, whatever. I think that's stuff that we have to navigate with trial and error almost, and honing. Like, that's almost like a professional skill. You either have this charismatic communication thing, or somebody has to, sort of like, you got to practice that. So I think that's just like, that's a skill. There's a class for that. But the actual reality of what it's like to run, the way a woman fundraises, the way that she has access to money or not, the way that she uses social capital, or that's there's much more bartering involved in I think when I ran, I think it was more of a community building. It was much more collaborative, or I wanted it to be more collaborative. So, what did I learn? It's hard to collaborate sometimes when you're under this enormous pressure. What did I learn? It was extremely lonely. Even as a social person, and somebody who was like, I love being with people. Every night I felt alone. Every day I felt alone. It's like, I felt like a middle child for like the whole run, because and like, like, maybe that's my spot. Like, I felt like,
Mhm.
it's not easy. It's really hard. And so
Yeah.
having support and making sure that, I went to a nutritionist right before I ran. Like, I really was like taking care of myself
Mhm.
as best as I could. And I don't think, I don't think I would change anything. I think it was just like, you got to get in there the first time, and then you see what it's like and how you are. And I don't know. It's like a marathon, like, you can train and train and train, but you never know how you're going to perform until you run it. So I think that my run was another really amazing sort of something I probably still need to reflect on. It was exhausting, but it was exhilarating. I think I got better as I got, through it. I definitely was more afraid in the beginning. Like, there was a lot of fear. imposter syndrome, lack of confidence, bolstering myself up. I remember one time I had to put my feet in ice water. Thank God for Zoom, because if I had to do real like conversations, I think I would have fainted like 6 out of 10 times.
So real though. I mean, I'm early on the trail and I already resonate so much with so many of those things. It's really a real thing. And there are structural things that make the barriers we face very real and systemic. And there's also conditioned things, right, that we've internalized that make it difficult in relationship to this particular sphere that was not designed for people like us. To adjust to, right? And then we also have this kind of like almost, one of the things I've been reflecting on a lot is we have almost this like, we have a weird way that we relate to elected officials. And one of those,
oh my God, yeah.
One of the ways that I think it's really weird is we like act like our legislators, their role is to just like know all things about all things, local policy, history, everything, right? And it's like, if you don't know something, then it's like this, like, oh my gosh, like, gotcha, right? And one of the things I really want to challenge, and I feel like I saw you do this in several ways too, was to just really model a different kind of leadership that is about having the humility and courage to just say, actually, like, I know a lot. I have a lot to bring to the table. And also, we're all in this together. We need the expertise and knowledge of everybody. And that's what shifting our governance to a kind of a true, more democratic and co-governance model requires of us, is that like that also that mindset shift, I think. Yeah. So it's just something that I know has already been coming up for me and thinking about. There's so much pressure, right?
Yeah.
Like perform certain things.
I think also like the evidence about, when less women run because they feel like they're not as knowledgeable about the subject matter, right? So it stops women from running because they think they have to be experts. Whereas when a man runs, they will be like, I'll figure that out, on the back end, like, or they pretend that they know it. They actually think they know it. We typically will admit that we don't know something. We need to become experts in something instead of saying like, I'm probably within normal limits, plus or minus. I'm good enough to run, and I'm humble enough and smart enough to, one, figure it out, and two, get the help I need to do it better.
Yeah.
So I think that's where our collaboration expertise and our desire to collaborate and our, again, I'm speaking in generalities, and I know if that's offensive to anyone, I own that, but I feel like really comfortable saying data suggests, data, indicates, it's not suggests, there's a bar graph. There's a bar graph.
Clearly demonstrates.
Clearly demonstrates, right? Fundraising, I feel like I was shocked and almost like I felt like at the end of my run, I should have bought somebody a house instead of like run for office. I was like, I made all this money and I just sent out mailers, and I feel like, I didn't feel comfortable with the whole expense of running for office.
It's wild. Yeah.
It's really distasteful to me as a person who is a frugal person, comes from really, very humble means. I'm comfortable now thanks to a union job, but I was very uncomfortable with asking people for money, accepting money, and spending money. And that's probably the worst thing you could admit to in like a campaign. But that there's got to be a better way. And I love women. What I'm seeing in women is asking for smaller donations, which is typically what women do. We get smaller donations and more of them, but it's more time consuming to make. But I also feel like it's more ethical, because I'm like, you just give what you can, right? Like that way you're participating in my success. I'm honoring you in your sacrifice for whatever that is. Like, I just wanted to, have as many people sort of feel invested. And sometimes money is a way to make people feel invested. But it's a tough racket.
It really is. And, that model has definitely been true for me. And I think that that's both, especially when you're not just a woman, but also working class candidate, right? And really kind of fighting for a working class, a pro working class agenda, I guess you could say. It's just, and it's interesting. I was proud. I think on our last filing, no one quote me on this, but it was something like I looked at our filing and I was like, oh my gosh, like we have like less than 10 people who have donated over $1,000, but we've raised over $250,000, right? Like that's wild. And I was really proud of that. But I was also like, where are the people who can, I need the bigger ones too.
Right.
Because a campaign, especially a congressional campaign, is wildly expensive. And when I call donors, it's so interesting, right? I'm mindful of these gender dynamics about women candidates and try to like make the hard ask and do these things, right? And it's like, but it's interesting because you hear so many folks who are so exasperated by getting so many political calls, and they're just like, oh, I get so many of these calls, I'm just exhausted and overwhelmed by them and blah blah blah. And I'm just like, that must be hard. And also, this is why we need to overhaul the campaign finance system. It shouldn't be set up like this.
Which
like,
is essentially, in my opinion, do you think it's ever going to get done? I mean, do you feel I know it would be on your.
It will if we elect, if we prioritize electing candidates who are committed to that agenda as a priority, and I think that's that and democracy and protecting our core rights. I think that those have to be things that we really look for, not just in women, but in candidates, period, is, and that's something I say to those folks when I call them is like, you know what, like, you're right. It's crazy that I have to spend hours calling wealthy people, pitching myself, asking them for money. And I don't mind putting in the work because I know that I'm doing it on behalf of this movement that we're trying to build, that is worthwhile and values driven. But it's still wild that this is our setup. This is our system, right? That this is the best that apparently we could have come up with.
Well, look what the alternative is, like then you get like an institutional person who has institutional money and access to institutional money. I'd rather put that time and call time explaining why it's important, explaining why people have a right to question me. And I'm happy to have that conversation. And then I think that was another plus of my campaign. And I think I out fundraised everyone in my race. And I did it in a way that I was very comfortable with, right? I didn't like follow a script. I just got better and better. Really just sort of having those conversations as if they were neighbors and friends, which they should be, right? Like, you're my fellow citizens. I want you to hear why I think I'm going to be okay at this and why I need your help and buy-in doing it, right? In Texas, they came up with the Democrats in Texas are actually having a hard time fundraising because they lose so much, and the Democrats, who are the donors, are sort of pushing back and saying, like, I've had it, like, with throwing my money away. And the lesson for that is to say, like, no, we need you to keep doing this. We need it. I mean, it might be like, not the greatest model to use, but look what's happened in Texas because of malaise, because of laziness, because of, lack of engagement, because of allowing more successful models of messaging and organizing. In addition to, all the evil stuff that happens in Texas, they are pretty savvy organizers that are taking advantage of having that upper hand. And we need to say, like, we need you here in Staten Island, here in our district. We need you to not be Texas, right, of Staten Island, right? Like, I like to look at everything from the nation and bring it right home to as micro as I can make it. And it's like, in my race, there was a lot of like, I know there was talk like, who does she, who is she? She doesn't have a chance or whatever. And I'm like, you know what? I got 35% of the vote. I out fundraised everybody in the race. I didn't have any name recognition outside of my own little, my own bubble. If I can do that, there's, I want to help and support and leverage whatever I can do for the next woman who's coming behind me. And luckily, I found a nice place to land in your campaign. And I'm so grateful to support you and be part of this wonderful, wonderful movement.
Thank you. I know it really means so much to me. We had so many conversations and we have so much more getting to know each other to do, but I really appreciate the time that we did take to just hear each other, understand each other's struggles, visions, concerns, and I think it meant that much more to me that you decided to support our campaign. And I'm really excited. And I do think we're building on the work that you and folks like Ronti and Amoy and so many other folks who have run in the district, Father K on the
Sure.
um,
Give it up for Father K. He moved to Florida on us.
Amazing endorsement that we've been incredibly just humbled and honored to have. And so I wasn't going to do this. If I was looking distracted earlier, it was because I got an idea to pull this up because we're talking about what's going on with, oh, hold on. Lost permissions. No, I had such a plan to share and now it's like telling me I have to do these tech things. Okay, I will have to share it later, but what I wanted to share was a chart that shows in the Texas legislature the people who have been elected and how many of them have been women. And then also for Congress, how many people have been elected throughout history to Congress and how many of them have been women. And we know it's not just about women, right? Because a woman such as our current congresswoman who is not actually ready to fight
Perfect
for
example
an agenda that is going to support women, especially women of color, working class women who are struggling, right? And like all of these things is not a win for feminism, right? We need champions who are going to be unapologetic about advancing the fight. But it still says so much about how far we have to go and how much we have to challenge. I think that the biases that folks hold out there in just deciding, right? Even if you're not sure, even if you're not like, then just support. If they are a working class or progressive champion who is running, and especially if they're working, and they're a woman, like just support people who are trying to do that, And so on that note, I would be remiss if I didn't say that we are approaching the end of our quarter. We have to wrap up soon. Lorie, it's such an honor to have your support, and it was so great to chat. And I know we'll have many more opportunities probably to come and have chats in public like this again. But we are approaching our fundraising quarter. I'm so proud of what the team has been doing, the work we've been putting in, and we want as much time as possible and resources as possible to be focused really organizing folks in the district, and that takes resources. And so if you are able to chip in whatever you're able to do, if it's $5 a month, if it's $25 one time, or if it's $1,000, whatever you're able to do, it is all so valued and so helpful. So the donate link is right there on the screen. I know we will also drop it in the chat, and you can always find it at our website. But support the movement that we're building, and one that is also about building and building in a way that puts back into the community, because I think that that's what it takes to really build long-lasting momentum and show real leadership. So,
and sometimes when you put your hard-earned money into something, you feel a part of that thing. And so it's not just about the amount that you're giving, it's the regularity that you're committing to, and it's the initial buy-in. Like not a lot of people are familiar with how important it is to give, and how it really does matter when we see like somebody giving. It touches my heart. And so I'm happy to continue to contribute to you. I'm happy to fundraise for you. I know how important it is, and I'm really, really looking forward to every single one of those people that give become another member of the campaign. So it really means a lot when you start seeing people give it at a level that they're comfortable with.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lorie. Anything else you want to share before we sign off for tonight?
I'm really happy That the Mets won? I don't know. I don't follow baseball. Like, I don't follow football.
Perfect conclusion.
If there was like a Subway series that I like that, I like to get people like riled up about something. But
Love it.
no, I'm happy that the kids are back to school.
I know.
I live right across the street from a school, and it just makes my heart so glad to like. I wave to all the kids in the morning, and I chat with the parents, and it seems like everyone's really, really happy. So I hope everybody stays safe and really has a wonderful, wonderful school year.
Yes, absolutely. Happy first week back to school, New York City.
Yay.
And I also am excited. We will have, there will be so many exciting festivities happening as Hispanic Heritage Month kicks off tomorrow. So be on the lookout. I know that there is La Comena and partners are organizing what looks to be a really exciting and fantastic Mexican parade, Mexican culture celebration and parade on Saturday in Staten Island. So if you haven't checked that out yet, check that out. And I know that there's probably a lot of different cultural events and things happening. So we have a growing and vibrant Latinx community in New York 11. And so if you are not connected to what's going on in that community, this is probably a good time to start looking around, getting connected, and going to events and getting to meet people. So just wanted to shout that out. And with that, we will, say goodnight. Thank you so much, everyone who tuned in live or who will tune in when you watch the recording. And, as always, just appreciate the work that everyone is doing out there. Make sure to follow Lorie and support her work on social media if you haven't already, and follow our campaign accounts at BRITT #4 Congress across all of our social media, which now includes TikTok. Good night,
Ooh.
everyone.